Welcome back to AI Explained. I'm Leo.
And I'm Clara. Today, we're tackling a topic that's becoming increasingly urgent as AI systems grow more powerful and pervasive: the ethics of artificial intelligence.
That's right. We spent our previous episodes exploring the incredible capabilities of AI technologies and their applications across various industries. But with great power comes great responsibility, as someone's uncle once said.
Are you really quoting Spider-Man in our Serious AI Ethics episode?
Hey, it fits. The point is, as these technologies become more integrated into critical aspects of society, from healthcare decisions to hiring processes, criminal justice to financial systems, we need robust ethical frameworks to ensure they benefit humanity rather than causing harm.
Absolutely. Today, we'll be exploring the ethical considerations surrounding AI development and use, looking at challenges like bias, privacy, transparency, and accountability, as well as examining approaches for creating responsible AI systems. Let's start with a broad overview of the AI ethics landscape. What are the key ethical principles that should guide AI development?
Well, there's been a real evolution in how we think about AI ethics. In the early days, discussions were often pretty abstract and theoretical, focused on sci-fi scenarios like superintelligent AI taking over the world.
Right, the whole Terminator scenario that dominated public imagination.
Exactly. But in recent years, the focus has shifted to much more immediate and practical concerns about AI systems that exist today or are being deployed in the near future.
What are some of those core ethical principles that seem to be widely accepted?
There's actually remarkable consistency across various AI ethics frameworks from different organizations. Most emphasize fairness and non-discrimination, transparency and explainability, privacy protection, accountability, safety and security, and human autonomy.
Who are the major stakeholders in these discussions?
That's a great question. You've got tech companies developing the technologies, of course, then governments and regulatory bodies trying to establish guardrails, civil society organizations advocating for public interests, researchers advancing technical approaches to ethical AI, and most importantly, the diverse communities affected by these systems.
I've noticed there can be significant tension between innovation and caution in these discussions. Companies often emphasize the potential benefits and want to move quickly, while others argue for more careful, measured approaches.
Absolutely. I was at an AI conference last month where this tension was on full display. The keynote from a tech CEO was all about accelerating AI development to solve humanity's biggest problems, while the panel of ethicists that followed was basically saying, slow down and think about the consequences before rushing ahead. Let's dive deeper into one of the most discussed ethical challenges in AI bias and fairness. This has really become a central concern in recent years.
For good reason. We've seen numerous examples of AI systems producing biased outcomes that affect real people. How does bias enter these systems in the first place?
There are actually multiple entry points. The most obvious is through the training data. If an AI system is trained on biased historical data, which most historical data is, reflecting societal inequalities, it will learn and potentially amplify those biases.
Can you give an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. A few years back, Amazon tried to develop an AI hiring tool that would review resumes and identify promising candidates. But since it was trained on the company's past hiring data, which reflected male dominance in the tech industry, it ended up penalizing resumes that contained terms associated with women, like women's chess club or graduates of women's colleges.
They ultimately abandoned that system, right?
They did. But bias can enter through other avenues too, through the choices developers make about what features to include, how to define target variables, or even through the structure of the algorithms themselves.
What are the real-world consequences of biased AI systems? I imagine they can be quite serious.
Absolutely. In criminal justice, biased risk assessment algorithms can lead to unfair detention or sentencing. In healthcare, biased diagnostic systems might provide worse care to certain demographic groups. In financial services, biased credit scoring can deny people access to loans or charge them higher interest rates.
These are high-stakes domains where algorithmic bias can directly harm people's lives and reinforce existing social inequalities.
And what makes this particularly challenging is that there are different mathematical definitions of fairnesses that can be mutually incompatible. You often can't simultaneously satisfy all intuitive notions of what fairness means.
So what approaches are being developed to address bias?
There's work happening at multiple levels. Technically, researchers are developing methods to detect and mitigate bias at different stages in the data preparation phase, during model training, and after deployment through monitoring. But equally important are procedural approaches like diverse teams, inclusive design practices, and stakeholder engagement, especially with communities most likely to be affected by these systems.
Another critical ethical dimension of AI is privacy. The unprecedented data collection capabilities enabled by modern AI raise serious concerns about surveillance and control.
It's really a fundamental tension, isn't it? Most modern AI systems, especially machine learning models, require enormous amounts of data to train effectively. But that creates significant privacy risks for individuals whose data is being collected and used.
What are some of the specific privacy concerns associated with AI?
Well, there's the sheer scale and pervasiveness of data collection. AI-powered surveillance systems can track people across physical and digital spaces in ways that were previously impossible. Then there's the ability of these systems to infer sensitive information that people never explicitly shared.
Like how recommendation algorithms seem to know what you want before you do.
Exactly. I had this creepy experience last week where I briefly thought about getting a new coffee maker, didn't search for it, didn't mention it to anyone, and suddenly my social media was filled with coffee maker ads. It felt like my thoughts were being read.
That's probably a case of the algorithm knowing your browsing patterns so well that it predicted your interests rather than actually reading your mind. But it illustrates how these systems can create a feeling of privacy invasion even when they're just making statistical predictions.
There's also the risk of re-identification. Even with supposedly anonymized datasets, AI techniques can often link data back to specific individuals by finding patterns across multiple sources.
Are there technical approaches being developed to preserve privacy while still enabling AI advancement?
Definitely. Privacy-preserving machine learning is a rapidly growing field. Techniques like federated learning allow models to be trained across multiple devices without sharing the raw data. Differential privacy adds carefully calibrated noise to protect individual information while maintaining statistical validity. And homomorphic encryption enables computation on encrypted data without decrypting it.
What about regulatory approaches? The European Union's GDPR has been influential globally, right?
Yes, GDPR established important privacy principles like data minimization, purpose limitation, and the right to explanation for automated decisions. We're seeing similar regulations emerging in California, Brazil, India, and elsewhere, though with varying emphases and enforcement mechanisms. Let's talk about transparency and explainability in AI systems. This is something I'm particularly passionate about because so many of today's most powerful AI tools function as black boxes.
By black box, you mean systems where even their creators may not fully understand how they're reaching specific decisions or recommendations?
Exactly. This is especially problematic with deep learning systems. They may have billions of parameters and learn complex patterns that aren't easily translated into human understandable explanations.
Why is explainability so important? Is it just about satisfying human curiosity?
It goes far beyond curiosity. Without understanding how AI systems reach their conclusions, it's difficult to identify when they're making mistakes or operating on biased assumptions. Explainability is essential for trust, for detecting errors, for improving systems, and in many contexts, for meeting legal and regulatory requirements.
I imagine it's particularly important in high stakes domains like healthcare or criminal justice.
Absolutely. If an AI system recommends denying someone parole or a specific medical treatment, those affected have a right to understand why. And the professionals using these systems, doctors, judges, etc., need to understand the basis for AI recommendations to exercise their own judgment appropriately.
What techniques exist for making AI more explainable?
There's a whole field called explainable AI or XAI developing approaches. Some focus on creating inherently interpretable models that sacrifice some performance for clarity. Others develop post hoc explanation methods for complex models like SHAP values that show which features most influenced a particular prediction, or counterfactual explanations that show how inputs would need to change to get a different result.
Are there cases where explainability might be less critical?
Sure. In low stakes applications like movie recommendations, users might care more about accuracy than explanations. Even in some high stakes domains like cancer detection, we might accept limited explainability if the system demonstrably saves lives, as long as humans remain in the decision loop.
So there's a balance to strike between performance and explainability, depending on the context.
Exactly. And we should be thinking about different levels and types of explanation for different stakeholders. A doctor might need technical details about how an AI diagnostic system works, while a patient might need a simpler, more conceptual explanation.
A related ethical dimension is accountability. As AI systems make or influence more consequential decisions, who's responsible when things go wrong?
That's a crucial question without easy answers. Is it the developers who built the system, the organization that deployed it, the users who operated it, or is the AI itself somehow responsible?
I think most people would agree that holding an AI system itself legally responsible doesn't make sense. It's not a moral agent capable of understanding right and wrong or facing consequences.
Right, though that doesn't stop people from anthropomorphizing AI and talking about them as if they have intentions or motivations. But the accountability question is getting more complex as AI systems become more autonomous and their decisions less predictable.
How are governments approaching AI regulation to address accountability concerns?
We're seeing different approaches emerge globally. The EU's AI Act takes a risk-based approach, with stricter requirements for high-risk applications. China has focused regulations on algorithmic recommendation systems and generative AI. The US has mostly relied on sector-specific regulations and guidance documents rather than comprehensive AI legislation.
Are these regulatory frameworks keeping pace with the technology?
Honestly, no. The rapid advancement of systems like large language models has outpaced regulatory frameworks. Policymakers are struggling to understand the technologies, let alone develop appropriate governance mechanisms.
What about industry self regulation?
Many tech companies have developed their own AI principles and review processes, which is a positive step. But self-regulation alone is insufficient, given the competitive pressures and potential conflicts between commercial interests and ethical considerations.
I've heard about algorithmic impact assessments as a governance tool. How do those work?
They're similar to environmental impact assessments, but for AI systems. Organizations systematically evaluate potential harms before deploying AI in sensitive contexts, with particular attention to impacts on marginalized communities. These assessments often include stakeholder consultation and ongoing monitoring plans.
That sounds like a promising approach for ensuring meaningful accountability.
It can be, when done well. The challenge is ensuring these assessments have teeth and aren't just box-checking exercises. Let's talk about how organizations can build ethical AI practices from the ground up, rather than treating ethics as an afterthought.
This seems crucial. Bolting ethical considerations onto systems after they're designed is far less effective than incorporating them throughout the development process.
Absolutely. Organizations need to integrate ethics into every stage, from problem formulation and data collection through model development, testing, deployment, and monitoring.
What are some practical steps organizations can take?
Diverse teams are a starting point. Technical teams that include people with different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives are more likely to identify potential ethical issues early. But diversity alone isn't enough. There need to be processes that explicitly consider ethical implications.
Like what?
Documentation practices like model cards and datasheets that record the intended uses, limitations, and potential risks of AI systems. Ethics review procedures for high-risk applications. Inclusive design approaches that engage affected communities. Robust testing for bias and other harms before deployment.
Some organizations have established ethics boards or committees, right?
Yes, though with mixed results. Google's short-lived Advanced Technology External Advisory Council is a cautionary tale. It was dissolved within weeks amid controversy over member selection. But other companies have implemented more successful oversight mechanisms.
Beyond specific mechanisms, it seems like organizational culture plays a huge role.
Absolutely critical. Leadership needs to genuinely value ethical considerations and create an environment where employees feel empowered to raise concerns without fear of retaliation. I was consulting with a tech company recently where employees spotted potential bias in a system but were afraid to speak up because they'd be seen as slowing down the product launch.
That's concerning but not surprising. The pressure to move quickly in competitive markets can create ethical blind spots.
Exactly. Organizations need to recognize that building ethical AI isn't just about avoiding harm, it's about building better, more trustworthy products that create sustainable value.
I'd like to discuss how AI ethics intersects with broader questions of power, justice, and equity in society. Ethical AI isn't just a technical challenge, it's deeply political and social.
That's an excellent point. While technical solutions to issues like bias are necessary, they're not sufficient. We need to ask deeper questions about Who benefits from AI systems? Who bears the risks? Who gets to make decisions about how they're developed and deployed?
Take facial recognition technology as an example. The technical work to reduce bias in these systems is important, but it doesn't address the more fundamental question of whether widespread deployment of facial recognition for surveillance is desirable in a democratic society.
Right. And research has shown that these systems are disproportionately deployed in communities of color and low income neighborhoods, raising serious justice concerns, even if the technology itself were perfectly accurate.
This raises questions about who should have input into AI development decisions. Should affected communities have a meaningful voice?
I absolutely think they should. My colleague Pilar was working on an AI project for allocating social services, and they made the effort to engage directly with service recipients and community advocates throughout the design process. The resulting system was much better for it. They identified potential harms and limitations that the technical team alone would never have spotted.
That participatory approach seems essential for ethical AI development. It's not enough for technical experts and executives to make these decisions in isolation.
And we should acknowledge that sometimes the most ethical decision might be not to build or deploy an AI system at all if the risks outweigh the benefits or if there are better non AI approaches to solving the problem.
That's a perspective we don't hear often enough in the tech industry, where there's often an assumption that more AI is inherently better.
Definitely. Ethical AI requires us to question that assumption and be thoughtful about where and how these technologies should be applied. Looking ahead, what do you see as the most pressing ethical challenges as AI continues to advance?
I'm particularly concerned about the concentration of AI power in a few large companies and nations. The resources required to develop frontier AI systems are enormous, creating barriers to entry and raising questions about who controls this transformative technology.
That's a huge issue. These systems increasingly serve as gatekeepers to information, opportunities, and resources, yet they're largely developed by a small, homogeneous slice of humanity.
What else concerns you about where AI is headed?
I worry about the potential for AI to exacerbate existing social divisions and inequalities if we're not careful. And I'm concerned about autonomous weapon systems and other military applications where ethical considerations might be secondary to strategic advantages.
I'm also thinking about labor displacement and economic disruption. While we discussed in our human AI partnership episode how these technologies can augment rather than replace humans, there will still be significant transitions that could be harmful if not managed well.
Absolutely. We need proactive policies to ensure the economic benefits of AI are broadly shared and to support workers through transitions.
I'm also concerned about the psychological and social impacts of increasingly sophisticated AI systems. How will human relationships, creativity, and autonomy be affected as we interact more with these technologies?
Those are profound questions without easy answers. I think we need robust democratic deliberation about what kind of AI future we want to create.
And those conversations need to include diverse perspectives, not just technical experts and business leaders, but philosophers, social scientists, artists, advocates, and ordinary citizens whose lives will be shaped by these technologies.
Exactly. Ethical AI isn't something that can be achieved once and for all through a checklist or a set of technical fixes. It requires ongoing attention, deliberation, and adjustment as technologies and social contexts evolve.
As we wrap up our exploration of ethical AI, what key takeaways should listeners remember?
I think the most important point is that ethics isn't an optional add on to AI development. It's fundamental to creating systems that truly benefit humanity. The technical and ethical dimensions of AI are inseparable.
And while we've discussed several key ethical dimensions separately, bias and fairness, privacy, transparency, accountability, these issues are deeply interconnected in practice.
We've also seen that ethical AI requires action at multiple levels: technical approaches to issues like bias and privacy, organizational practices and cultures that prioritize ethical considerations, and broader societal governance frameworks.
And meaningful progress requires involving diverse stakeholders, especially those most likely to be affected by these technologies, but least likely to have a voice in their development.
Ultimately, the goal isn't to perfect AI ethics, it's to create ongoing processes for identifying, deliberating about, and addressing ethical challenges as they emerge.
Because these challenges will continue to evolve as AI capabilities advance and are applied in new contexts.
Exactly. The ethical frameworks we develop today need to be robust enough to guide us through the challenges of tomorrow, even as specific issues change.
I think that's a good place to end our discussion. The field of AI ethics is complex and evolving, but the core principles respecting human dignity, autonomy, and well being, preventing harm, ensuring fairness and inclusion provide a foundation for responsible development and use.
So, what's coming up next in our AI Explained series?
Our final episode will look toward the horizon with the future of AI, possibilities and challenges ahead. We'll explore emerging technical frontiers, AI's potential role in scientific discovery, the economic transformations that might lie ahead, and long term questions about the relationship between humanity and increasingly capable AI systems.
I'm really looking forward to that discussion. The ethical considerations we've explored today will be crucial in shaping that future, ensuring that as AI becomes more powerful, it remains aligned with human values and well being.
Absolutely. We'll examine both the tremendous possibilities for human flourishing that AI might enable and the challenges we'll need to navigate thoughtfully.
If you found today's exploration of AI ethics valuable, please share this episode with friends or colleagues who might be interested in understanding these crucial considerations for responsible AI development.
And join us next time for our final episode as we gaze into the crystal ball and examine the future of artificial intelligence. Thanks for listening to AI Explained.